In the second part, we're going to talk about another hot topic, which this community seems pretty split on the forums and such, about whether the life staff and healing was overpowered or not. A lot of people who'd never play the game or only played the game for a week or only got to level 20 thought the life staff was fine, but in reality, the life staff and healing is actually pretty overpowered and pretty stupid. And here's the reasons why it's so overpowered and why it's pretty stupid and brain dead. First reason, too much healing for too little focus. You do not have to be spec'd all the way into focus to be able to dish out big healing numbers, which goes against the whole point of a life staff, right? You would think that you would need to spec all the way into focus to be able to do so well with the life staff, but in reality that is not true. You do not have to go all the way into focus, you only have to go to 200 focus. You can go up to 100, 150 focus and you'll be fine, which leads into the next point. Being able to do too much damage. So because you only have to invest so little into focus, you can invest your points elsewhere. So strength, intelligence, whatever your primary stat attribute is. And in doing so, if you were to pair the life staff with the great axe, for example, or the hatchet, you can do a lot of damage while being unkillable. But being unkillable in a 1v1 is fine, typically, right? Except if you're going up against a user, a hatchet user with infected throw, and he's applying the debuff to you, and you are still unkillable. So that infected throw disease, the actual status effect is called disease, which will decrease your healing efficiency by 30 seconds for 8 seconds. And the cooldown on hatchet throw is 12 seconds, but most people were running the faction gear with the cooldown reduction, so it's more like it was like 10 or 9 seconds. So it's almost 100% uptime, and you cannot still kill a healer even though you are reducing their healing output by 30%. And this really shown its issue through one thing what I talked about last episode, which is if you pair the life staff with the great axe, you are essentially unkillable in group PvP due to the 40% damage reduction. Meaning you could be tanking 5 or 6 guys and you could still retain almost full health and take no damage. Now, if you didn't watch the last video, as long as you hold great axe in your hand, you automatically get a 20% damage reduction. With life staff, the buffs persist after you swap out your weapon. So you apply Orb of Protection, you get a 20-second Fortify buff, or longer if you spec into the buffs that casted buffs remain longer. And then you swap to your great axe and boom, you're almost taking 50% less damage. Now the final reason why life staff is overpowered is because all those buffs, all those abilities persist after swapping out of the weapon. This is not the case for most other weapons. For instance, if I were to throw a gravity well on great axe and I stand in my gravity well, I get a fortify buff that lasts for 3 seconds. But the moment I switch out of great axe and I'm still in the gravity well, I lose that fortify buff. Well, for life staff, none of that happens. You retain all their health regeneration, you retain your fortify, all the abilities that you put out, Sacred Ground, or Protection, Beacon, all that still is remaining on the field and still affecting you and your teammates. That is why it's so broken. So options how to fix this. Well, first thing you can do is give more abilities the disease status effect. Currently there is only one ability in the game, one weapon in the game that is able to apply the disease status effect, and that's hatchet and that's affected throw. Affected throw has its own issues. It's hard to land, it's a very slow throw unlike rending throw, and the AoE cloud only lasts 3 seconds. So how many people will still stand still in a AoE disease cloud for 3 seconds? They'll just move out of the way and be completely fine. Unless you get a direct hit where that debuff will last 8 seconds. But being able to land that thing is tough. If you're up close, it will completely miss. So you need to be at least 2 or 3 feet back away from the target. Another option would be to give weapons the ability to roll perks that apply the disease status effect. So that could be from if you're under a certain HP threshold, so like if the target, you hit a target that's below 50% health, they get a disease, they get 1 stack of disease that decreases their healing efficiency by 5%. And it's something small, but that it can increment up, right? Perks like that can greatly help. Another way to do it, another option, is to add in a anti-heal gem that can apply stacks of disease as well. So that could be the similar thing. If they're under a certain HP threshold, or if you do it on, let's say, a charged heavy attack, or at the end of your light attack chain, it applies a disease. So if you hit all 4 attacks, or 3 attacks, whatever weapon you're using, it will apply the disease stats effect, a stack of disease. Even with these added options, healing will still be too strong because the numbers are too big. The abilities provide too much healing and too many buffs. For instance, Sacred Ground. Create an area on the ground that lasts for 15 seconds and heals 20% weapon damage every second. That's a lot. Not only does it do that, but it increases stamina and mana regen by 100%. Not only does it do that, while you're in the Sacred Ground, you're healed for 50% more from all healing. That's a huge amount, right? And the only ultimate worth getting is Divine Blessing. When you heal an ally, if their health is below 50%, heal for 30% more. That's a lot. You would see when you're normally fighting a life staff user, they would be using their damage weapon, and then once you get them down to 50%, they switch to the life staff, right? And then they heal for full, and then they're unkillable. So there's other perks and passives in the life staff tree that just make heals so strong, such as Bend Light. After a dodge, your heals are 20% more effective for 5 seconds. Protector Strength. If you have a buff, heal for 10% more. And then perhaps the most greatest heal of all, Light's Embrace. Targeted heal for 100% weapon damage, plus 30% more for each buff on that target. Now, if you use Lifestaff or ever fought against Lifestaff, you would see the number of buffs that they have range from 5, 6 to 7 buffs at one time. That is a lot of healing. If you can't do the math, that is a lot. That's like a 4 or 5k heal right there. For a cooldown of 4 seconds, that is a lot. Orb of Protection grants 15% fortified for 20 seconds, heals an ally for 10% of weapon damage. If Orb of Protection hits an ally, they gain recovery for 10 seconds, which heals you for 7.5% weapon damage every second. If you hit an ally with the orb, you also gain Fortify and Recovery. And then if you spec into the last one, Aegis, it affects all allies within a 3-meter radius. That is Fortify and Recovery on every single person. It's a bit extreme. So, as you can see, there's too many perks, too many passes in the life staff tree that heal for too much, have very low cooldowns, grant too many buffs, and healing abilities that heal you for way much more than probably intended due from the amount of buffs that you currently have on you. Now, life staff wouldn't be as bad the moment you switched off life staff. You would lose all the buffs and abilities. You would lose Sacred Ground, you would lose Orb of Protection, you would lose Beacon. If none of that persisted after you use life staff, this would be a completely different talk, because you would be taking life staff's users' damage weapon away from them, and then they would be forced to have life staff out. Now, life staff will still do a lot of damage, but again, it will make you want to go into full focus for life staff to be able to do the high damage, to do even more high healing. So that's one way to resolve this, is to tone down the abilities and the perks that provide the healing. More specifically, I'm talking about Divine Blessing, the ultimate under the healing skill tree. That needs at least a 60-second cooldown, and to get rid of the buffs and abilities when you swap off your weapon. These two things would be a great start to be able to get the life staff in line with other weapons. And the third thing is adding the disease stats effect to more weapons and abilities. Limiting only one ability and only one weapon to be able to apply that is kind of silly with the amount of healing that's throughout the game. This doesn't just include life staff, but it includes other healing, from potions to the passive health recovery to food recovery. All those things really stack up and make a PvP battle last longer than it should, especially being able to disengage so easily from a combat situation. But that will be the next video. We'll talk about stamina regeneration with light armor. So to summarize, here are the changes I like to see. Added more anti-heal abilities, perks, or gems that can apply the disease status effect. Reduce the potency of healing with little focus. Require greater investment and focus to be able to do greater heals. Reduce Sacred Ground effectiveness. So to do this, I would reduce the time that is active from 15 seconds to 8 seconds, and also reduce the 50% healing increase to 30% increase in healing. And then I would also change it so Sacred Grounds do not stack. So you cannot use 2 Sacred Grounds from 2 separate healers and get double the benefit. I would also add a cooldown to the Divine Blessing perk. I would make it where it can only trigger every 30 to 60 seconds. I would also increase the cooldown on Orb of Protection, because currently you can use it and you can have Fortify on at all times. I would decrease the Fortify buff to 10 seconds, and I would increase the overall cooldown from 10 seconds to 20 seconds. I would also increase the cooldown on Lights Embrace from 4 seconds to 15 seconds. And then last but not least, I would also make sure that abilities and buffs do not persist after swapping from the life staff. So that's my thoughts on life staff and why I think it's overpowered, and healing in general is overpowered because of those reasons. Thanks for watching. Peace.